Hello and welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. This is a podcast to help you find peace with food and overcome disordered eating. And I'm Harriet Frew, aka the Eating Disorder Therapist. And I'm so excited to share with you all kinds of stories, tips, information and guest interviews to help you on your journey in finding peace with food. So thank you so much for listening today. So today I want to talk more about the psychology of eating disorders and particularly focusing on feelings, looking at people pleasing and also perfectionism and how these behaviours or traits can manifest in people with eating disorders and how they can be barriers to change. And then to think about what you can do personally to help yourself break out of patterns of people pleasing or perfectionism, and also for people around you who may be supporting you, how they can help with this too. So people that develop eating disorders tend to be sensitive souls who feel their feelings very deeply. Now, ultimately, I believe this is a superpower and means that individuals are hugely empathic, kind and compassionate beings. Also, it can mean that the world can be intense and overwhelming, though. It's often hard for someone to know where their feelings end and someone else's begin. So someone might often take on a caring role for the people they love. They will often put their own needs to one side, not always consciously, but do everything they can to make sure that they keep the peace and don't upset others. They want harmony and for others around them to be okay. And if there are being stresses going on in the family, which of course happen, this is life, but maybe bereavement or illness or a sibling that's struggling, the person with the eating disorder will likely have recognized the stress that everyone is under, and they will have tried to minimize any further stress. So they'll often aim to get on with life themselves and to cause minimal fuss or any additional worries. Now, the problem with this coping is that it's very people-pleasing. Now, people-pleasing is a survival strategy that short-term can seem to work. And the person pre-eating disorder may have appeared as a super coper and almost like the non-problem person who just gets on with it. But the problem with people-pleasing behavior means that someone's own feelings do not get felt, heard, or expressed. And for good emotional health, we need to be in touch with our feelings, at least some of the time, so we can get our needs met. A person with an eating disorder might have become quite terrified or overwhelmed with their own feelings. So they will often try to keep their negative emotions at bay. And if feelings do bubble to the surface, they might push them down or feel that they are wrong or messy or unmanageable. And they often don't want to express feelings that might conflict with people around them. And they don't want to burden others and create more stress. Then what happens is that food is often a focus of control and safety. It's one of the very few things we have complete control over personally. So whether it be restricting food or eating in secret, focusing on food can numb or distract from difficult feelings. So if you're struggling with an eating disorder and you resonate with this, I'd really encourage you to open up and talk to someone close who you can trust about what is going on. So this might not be someone in your family. Hopefully it can be, but it may be that you speak to a good friend or someone in your extended family, like an aunt or a cousin, or maybe a teacher or someone at work. You are not a burden for having feelings. It's okay and safe to express how you feel. So this can be such a turning point for change, to feel heard, listened to, and understood. You might also wish to try journaling and just allowing yourself to connect with your inner world. You've probably become adept at knowing what you should do, what others expect of you, whether this be the culture, educational institution, work, family, or friends. But it's trying to put some of these shoulds to one side and to allow yourself to tune in and recognize what's important for you. Now, if you're a loved one of someone with an eating disorder, you will naturally be struggling as it's so hard to see your loved one in pain. But it's imperative that you express your own understandable anxieties, worries, and strong feelings to either a counsellor, close friend, a supportive partner, or someone you trust. Because if you don't do this, these feelings will be bubbling day by day, and they'll leak out in bursts of anger, anxiety, and emotional overwhelm. So prioritize your own self-care and fill yourself up so that you can be emotionally resourceful, calm, and present for your loved one. It's impossible for a human being to hold a safe space for another person when you're feeling in fight, flight yourself, and then likely so reactive. And if your loved one can sense that talking to you will make you worry or panic, they will hold their feelings inside to protect you. So your job is to be quietly supportive, to listen and to offer acceptance and encouragement. You cannot fix or push someone to change. This is not your job. So if you want to find out more about how to support someone with an eating disorder, particularly sort of mid-teens to adults, I really recommend that you Google the new Maudsley animal model. And I try and remember to put that in the show notes. But that really talks about different helpful ways of supporting your loved one with an eating disorder. And those skills that I've sort of talked about being there, sort of quietly supportive, listening, affirming, being accepting, that kind of comes under the dolphin metaphor, but you'll be able to read more about the other animals. It's a great tool to use when supporting someone. So another pattern that is seen in some people with eating disorders is a tendency towards perfectionism and relying on external validation. So often pre-eating disorder, the person may have been incredibly driven, possibly excelling academically or in a particular sport or in their attractiveness to others. So they may have been praised and validated for this. Now, there's nothing wrong with praising someone for their hard work and dedication and achievements. But what can be challenging is then when someone's self-esteem becomes very conditional around this. So they might feel that they must be the perfect golden person who is excelling and the best. And if they don't meet these standards, which have often become their own internal standards, then they feel as though they're failing. And again, control of food or weight can then be a welcome coping to gain a sense of control and achievement when possibly the other standards feel too much to live up to. Someone's perfectionism may have led them to believe that they cannot express the messy, vulnerable parts of themselves, that this is a sign of weakness and that they need to maintain this positive and super achieving persona. So if you're struggling with an eating disorder and you relate to this, recognize that as human beings, we are all messy and imperfect, whatever it appears from the outside. You may be academic or sporty or beautiful or resilient, but also you will sometimes be anxious, overwhelmed, imperfect and flawed. And trying to be perfect all the time and being cut off from your emotions and imperfections is an impossible way to live. And when you're doing this, of course, you will need to try and control and numb the messy parts of life, and likely with food and control of your body. So take a baby step towards giving yourself permission to be imperfect and to embrace all parts of yourself. You are good enough and loved exactly as you are. You are not defined by external achievements. And if you're a loved one of someone struggling with perfectionism and an eating disorder, do your very best not to amplify these external pressures. We live in a culture where academic institutions place intense pressure on young people to perform, where social media is very validating of a certain look, and where outward achievement is often valued over someone's innate inequalities. Again, be there offering acceptance, a listening ear, warmth, and unconditional love. And if you struggle with perfectionism yourself, be kind and compassionate towards yourself. Perfectionism is a survival strategy to try and feel good enough. And as a loved one supporting someone with an ED, seek out your own support if you need to. And this will support you in being able to offer a good enough support to your loved one rather than imposing external pressures to conform. So I hope this episode has given you some insights into understanding an eating disorder as a coping strategy. And it's often said it's not about food, it's about feelings. And this is so very true. It becomes all about food, but this is really a distraction or numbing from the deeper feelings beneath. And it can feel much safer to focus on food and your body than to acknowledge anger, jealousy, hurt, disappointment, rage, or grief. Recovery from an eating disorder is possible. You have the wisdom and inner knowledge within. Your body knows what it needs and can support you. You may need to relearn, though, to tune in again. but there is an inner voice within you that is healthy and can guide you along your own unique path. But you may need to reach out and get professional support to guide you through. Reach out to people in your life who offer support, understanding, and unconditional love, and gently distance yourself from anyone who is controlling, invalidating of your feelings, or is emotionally draining of you. Don't give up. Recovery is possible for you. If you're not following me already, do seek me out on Instagram at the Eating Disorder Therapist. And for further support with your relationship with food, do go to the eatingdisordertherapist.co.uk. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd be so grateful if you'd follow, rate and review, as it helps it reach so many more listeners. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.